Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is the third Ant-Man film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and also happens to be the most recent release from this movie franchise, and it's once again directed by Peyton Reed. He has directed all three of the Ant-Man movies up to this point. The movie is set up to take place pretty recently after the events of Avengers Endgame. As we see from the beginning, Scott Lang is essentially still in the midst of a victory lap. With regards to Scott being a part of the big battle that took place in that film, and we see just everyone thanking him for his service, I guess you could say. It's like sort of a comparison you can make to people thanking veterans for serving. What really gets this plot started and kickstarts it into motion is Scott's daughter, Cassie, sending a signal down to the quantum realm because she has been able to come into contact with the quantum realm. But she sends this signal, and long story short, they all get sucked into it and they have to get out now. Them being Scott, Cassie, Hope, aka the Wasp, Hank, and Janet, Hope's parents. They're all stuck there now. I think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has done a pretty good job with Ant-Man and his implementation into this franchise, with his involvement in other movies and with other characters, and also his movies themselves I think have been pretty good. Not necessarily some of my favorites in the series, but I think they've been good, they've been funny, and I like Paul Rudd a lot as this character. And no matter what, I'm always curious to see what the MCU is going to come out with next, even with my criticisms of them really ever since the dawn of the MCU, but also just in more recent years with me being, I think, slightly more critical, which also may have something to do with me putting my thoughts out to the internet and trying to be a little more articulate with the way that I judge these things. I've still honestly enjoyed a lot of what they have come out with. I still think there have been more hits than misses. I'm a Marvel fan. I've been a fan of this franchise and I've enjoyed a lot of what they have done and what has come out of it. There have been some duds for sure. I'm not saying that everything has been good, because it certainly hasn't been, but I've enjoyed a majority of it. Truthfully, I really have, and I was still excited for this movie nonetheless, even though I didn't know exactly why we were getting another one other than for just money, I guess. And I'm not the kind of person to make big clickbait worthy statements like saying this is the best of all time, the worst of all time, and not necessarily even in the context of the internet. Like just interacting person to person, people ask me what's your favorite movie, who's your favorite artist, whatever. I don't typically have an answer for that, just because it's like I have so many options to go through and I want to provide a good answer. So I typically do like try to dodge those kinds of questions. And I'm saying all of this to set up and hopefully brace you guys for what I'm about to say right now, which is that I think this is the worst MCU movie they've ever made so far. I don't say that to be mean. I don't say that to upset anyone. I apologize if I do. I really do apologize. I don't apologize for my opinion, but I apologize if me saying that upsets anyone and like they take it personally. It's not personal. This is just my thoughts on it. Don't take me seriously at all, please. But this was just a thought that I had circling throughout my head as the movie was concluding, and especially after I walked out and was lingering on what I just saw. Why do I think that? Why is that a big thing that I want to say to set up my review? Well, you know, I want to get to that later. First, I want to talk about some things that I did like about this movie, because I don't think it's a complete train wreck. I do think there are some things that work for it. Paul Rudd, I think, is still really great as this character, as Scott Lang, as Ant-Man. I think he plays the role in this film particularly well, as Scott is trying to sort of make up for lost time, especially with his daughter Cassie, who, you know, he was away from for 5 years. The action in this movie, though, I think it has lost a significant amount of charm from the first Ant-Man, which, you know, it just had the factor of him shrinking and having these scenes take place with him being small. You know, it certainly has lost that unique quality and that unique feel to it, I guess you could say. But I actually do think that the action scenes are some of the most entertaining parts of this movie, partially because it distracts from the messiness of the plots and also the surprisingly weak performances almost all around. But I actually didn't mind some of these scenes, and there is a pretty decent hand-to-hand fight that we get towards the end of the film. There's blood. Obviously there's not a lot of blood because it's not rated R, but it actually did have some grit to it, and I did like that type of approach they took to the action in that area. I also don't mind the quantum realm being more explored in this movie and seeing more of it, seeing the creatures that inhabit it. I think it's a cool idea, though I don't love everything they do with it. And yes, it does look just incredibly fake a lot of the time. The CGI, I'll get to that later, but I don't mind looking more into that and seeing more of that world. Cool, I'm down for that. And Kane the Conqueror plays a big role in this movie, really the main antagonist for the film. And, you know, obviously it's not the first time we've seen him. He played a pretty big role in the show Loki as well. I'm aware this is not the first time we've seen him, but the setup that we get for him in the context of this film and of the story of this film, I think is pretty okay. I didn't mind it. I didn't mind some of the backstory we got with him and with Janet, played by Michelle Pfeiffer. I didn't mind that. And Jonathan Majors is clearly into this role, and he is clearly trying his best, but I still don't really care for the performance at all. I think it is still pretty underwhelming, and I do think that there is more to be done with this character. He could be compelling. He's like almost there, but for me, it's just missing the mark and way too generic and by the numbers to me. I'm sort of out of good things to say though with this movie, I guess, other than, you know, there's a few funny moments, whatever. What did I not like about this movie? Well, it's not one big thing that's like, this is why this movie isn't good. It's just a bunch of different things that I honestly think like almost could work and had the potential to work. I mentioned the CGI and how bad it is, and I mentioned the acting, which, yeah, surprisingly, a lot of the acting was pretty wooden. Not necessarily awful performances to be seen here, but just very bland, monotonous deliveries. I mean, it seriously felt like I was watching the prequels at times with some of the acting here. Except for, I'll say, Bill Murray. He's actually pretty good here. He is, unfortunately, not in the movie very much, but I liked him when he was on the screen. It was cool. But another big thing that really didn't work for me with this movie was what the script does with the characters and where they fit within the plot. Hope, for example, is hardly even a contributing factor to what happens in this movie, other than the fact that her parents, and specifically Janet, had previous involvement with the quantum realm, which we do explore a little bit in flashback scenes. But I mean, gosh, why is her name even in the title? It's not Ant-Man Quantumania, it's Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, and she is barely in the movie. She barely has any involvement with what's going on in the story. I was struggling to figure out why she was even in the movie. I don't mind Evangeline Lilly as the character. Her performance is passable at best, I think, here. It's fine, whatever. But I just didn't know why she was in it. Can anyone explain to me why the Wasp is in this movie? I mentioned Khan in the movie as a villain, really not working for me much. There's another kind of antagonist that they incorporate into this movie, though. Oh my god. I don't know why he was here. It legitimately felt like a comedy every time he showed up. Just the look of him is hilarious. Like, it's absolutely hilarious, but not in a good way. It's like, oh my god, I can't believe he looks that bad. This may somewhat give it away, but it's like George Lopez in The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Like, he literally looks like that character when he's that villain in that world. And that, I think, actually works a lot better in that movie because it's supposed to be silly and cartoonish and funny. Like, that movie's a comedy. This movie, however, even though there is a good amount of comedy in it, is also trying to be incredibly serious, and they're trying to be these serious stakes set up, especially with what Colin is threatening to do to Scott and to his family and just to the world at large. So this character that pops up feels so incredibly out of place. It is also sort of a character that has been revived in a way from previous existence in the Marvel universe, and I think it is just an atrocious implementation into this movie. And I would mention the story and the screenplay here as being something that I think missed the mark as well, but I really only mention it because of other things that don't work here that just makes that even more stand out, because really a lot of these Marvel movies don't have the best screenplays, the most interesting screenplays and situations that our characters are put in. Even though I do find a lot of them to be entertaining and to be fun movies, when you really take a deep dive into the script, a lot of these Marvel movies just are really not that interesting, don't have a lot of substance to them. With, of course, some exceptions. I'm not saying that everyone is like that, but I do think that a lot of them are. And so I only mentioned that being an issue with this movie because of the several other things that don't work for it, that just add more emphasis and focus into how lacking in substance the screenplay is with this movie, and also just how messy it is in general. So to conclude my thoughts here, I didn't like this movie very much. Obviously, it's needless to say. I came into it wanting to like it. I didn't want to dislike it, or wasn't ready to dislike it, even though I didn't think it looked all that great from the trailers. I do just want to mention that I did not come in ready to hate on it by any means. I like to think that I go into every movie with the same expectations, with the same approach, ready to give it a fair shot and give it a fair assessment. And in general, I don't feel like I normally have to defend my opinions, because my opinions are just my opinions, and this is just what I think. And people obviously do get upset over other people's opinions, but like, I don't feel the need to really back myself up on these kinds of things. But I do feel the need to back myself up on such claims as best this, worst that, me saying this is the worst MCU movie that they've made, because that is genuinely what I believe. That is what I felt and thought after this movie. It's what I'm thinking right now, and that's just been a lingering thought in my head. And so I just want to stress that that is just really how I feel, and I'm not saying that to attract viewers and to get people talking and get more views on this video and get hate comments. I don't necessarily want any of that, but I just want to stress that this is how I genuinely feel. I genuinely did not like this movie, and yeah, there's that. There's my review. I would give this a 3.5 out of 10. So, do you guys like this movie? Did you see it? Did you watch it yet? I hope you guys did. In general, I think that the theater I was in did enjoy this movie. So if you did, awesome. That's great. I wish I did, but unfortunately, didn't like it that much. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. You know, like I said, this is just how I feel about it. If you're gonna hate, if you want to write a hate comment, if you want to get upset with me, just do it at your own risk. You know, don't take it too far to where it starts to affect you mentally. Please do not do that. Just be careful. I mean, like, generally be careful, because that could really be harmful for some people. But thank you all for watching. Take care and peace out.